you need to leave. So he took his pitchfork and poked holes in the river to like drain it out, which then again delayed production. So like this very angry farmer just like took away their babbling brook and like was like, I'm so done with y'all, please leave. So like that's just I can just imagine this farmer like coming in and just like, get out of my land. You're disturbing my cows. So yeah, so that was like and that was, I think she said that was the last thing they shot in Austria was that Sound of Music the opening segment. Also, and another, I won't tell the whole story, but if you look up Julie Andrews on talk shows, she does talk about the process of filming that opening scene where she's twirling around on the mountain and how the helicopter wind would always make her fall down. So definitely look up Julie Andrews talking about how they filmed the opening. It's very funny. So those are my fun facts. The rest of my fun facts that I found.
Rachel, you talk like we're running out of time. Tell the entire story.
About no, Julie tells it so much better.
Yes,
like no, it's mostly I'm mostly saying to look her up because she tells it because she was actually there. So I'm telling the reader to enjoy Julie Andrews.
Yes, go for it.
Or the reader, well, the listener. Wow,
the listener.
It's Sunday.
They will read this entire transcript and be the transcript of the podcast. That opening scene was one of the last things that they shot while they were in Austria. The entire company had gone back, and it was taking them so long to shoot because it kept raining that Dick Zanuck finally called Robert Wise. He said, you get back to Hollywood. At this very moment, he said, okay, I tell you what, give us until Thursday. And this was like Saturday or Sunday. He said, give us until Thursday. If we can't get the shot, then we will come back. And all week long, it rained. And there was a brief half hour on that Thursday morning where everything opened up. And in that half hour, they shot that opening sequence. Not the entire opening sequence, because all of those hills, oceans, and valleys were shot by the second unit, which went out to Austria after everybody had left. Oh, yes. Christopher Plummer playing in that hotel lobby. The entire cast would go and stay up with him all night. The nuns, not the children. Some of the mothers would come, the mothers of the children, and they would just sit around the piano and drink and play all night. Julie Andrews would never go. She was always invited, but she did not want to go because her daughter, Emma Kate, was on location with her. So she would spend the night taking care of her daughter. She said, so it got to be kind of lonely. Well, and plus she had been on set for like 14 or 15 hours all day, and she was exhausted. The last thing she wanted to do was go stay up all night and drink and sing songs.
Yeah, she said in her book, she talks about how it was basically like her and her daughter and the nanny, and how she wanted to make sure she was back with the daughter. And also Christopher Plummer and her stayed at different hotels. So like that was also part of it too, was that like it wasn't at the hotel she was staying in.
The Sound of Music had its New York City premiere on March 2nd, 1965 at the Rivoli Theater. And then several days later, it had its LA premiere. And then, several weeks later, it premiered all over. But after the New York City premiere, this is what Bosley Crowther, who was a very well-revered New York Times critic, had to say. He had been reviewing movies since the 1930s. He said, the great big color movie Mr. Weiss has made from the play comes close to being a careful duplication of the show as it was done on the stage, even down to its operatic pattern, which predates the cinema age. Julie Andrews provides the most apparent and most fetching innovation in the film. Her role is always in peril of collapsing under the weight of romantic nonsense and sentiment. The septet of blonde and beaming youngsters who have to act like so many Shirley Temples and Freddie Bartholomew's when they were young do as well as could be as expected with their artificial roles. But the adults are fairly horrendous, especially Mr. Christopher Plummer, staged by Mr. Wise in a cozy come corny fashion that even theater people know as old hat. The Sound of Music repeats in style and in theme. So critics absolutely hated this film, but I will tell you what, and there's another critic story. I mean, there was one, Pauline Kael wrote for McCall's magazine that as The Sound of Music is the sugar-coated lie that some people want to eat. This is the attitude that makes a critic feel it's all hopeless. Soon after it was posted, there was a flood of mail from angry readers vehemently protesting Kael's review of the film, so she was then fired from McCall's. So it caused a critic to be fired. And then there was another one. So Judith Christ in the New York Herald Tribune called it icky sticky and for the 5 to 7 set and their mommies. Daryl Zanuck was so taken aback by this, he sent a memo to Fox vice president to the head of distribution, Seymour Poe, and said that there should be an industry effort to dislodge Christ from her spot on the Today Show. So all of these negative comments by critics were not taken well by the public. They were not taken well by anybody at Fox because, like I said, when we started out, it broke box office records in 29 countries. And what Fox did when a thing started in the 1950s, along with CinemaScope, which Daryl Zanuck developed, but also with the big musicals and a lot of the big epic films, they started a thing that I believe might have started in the 40s, but it wasn't really used until the 1950s, called the Roadshow. And so what the Roadshow was for these great big musicals, great big epic films, or like The Great Race, which is an epic comedy. They had overtures, they had intermissions, and they had exit music. And then they would put them in like these, they would choose like 40 or 50 cities, like they did for Sound of Music in the United States. And they would put them in like the community center's biggest, most beautiful theaters. And they would do 2 shows a day. The people had to dress up. They paid like a larger price. Well, and sometimes they had scenes in the roadshow presentations that were not in the theatrical presentation. So they paid to hear the overture, they paid to hear the intermission, they paid to hear the exit music, they paid to see some of the extra scenes, and they paid for like these novelty programs. And each of these theaters would do 2 showings in one day. So that's what Sound of Music was a giant roadshow presentation, which was phased out in the late 60s. So in like the first several weeks, from just 25 of these roadshow theaters who were only showing it 2 times a day, compared to like theatrical regular theaters who were showing it without overtures, intermission, and exit music, these roadshow theaters, it went to number 1 at the box office in just like 2 weeks at these 25 different roadshow theaters. So it was incredibly successful. It had previewed before it premiered at a theater in Minneapolis, and it previewed at a theater in Tulsa. And those both went incredibly well. Minneapolis, because anytime Fox previewed a film in Minneapolis, they had a great response. Anytime they previewed a film in Tulsa, they always had awful responses. But in Tulsa, funny enough, Sound of Music had a great response from the audience. So they knew it was going to be something special. And then at the Oscars, I think it was nominated for 10 Oscars and it won 5. Even though critics hated it, the entire film community was still kind of against it because it was so sugary and saccharine. But it won Best Picture, it won Best Director, and it won Best Film Editing, and it won Best Scoring of Music, Adaptation or Treatment, and it won Best Sound. It was nominated for Best Actress for Julie Andrews, Best Supporting Actress for Peggy Wood, who played the Reverend Mother, was nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design. Yeah, it won 5 of those 10 Oscars. It won Best Picture, which shocked a lot of people, up against Dr. Zhivago. Everybody thought Dr. Zhivago was a shoo-in, which I would think Dr. Zhivago
I would think Dr. Zhivago, because it's one of those like Lawrence of Arabia epics.
Right.
Like people love
exactly.
it. One also fun fact about Sound of Music. So Sound of Music is one of, I think, 4 musicals that's won Best Picture and Best Musical. So it's one of 4.
Like Best Picture,
Best Picture Oscar, and then Best Musical Tony. So it's one of 4 like movie musicals to do that.
That's amazing. Rex Harrison was announcing. The good thing about like Julie Andrews losing that Oscar was Rex Harrison was announcing the Best Actress. And so Julie Andrews was up against Julie Christie for Dr. Zhivago, which she gave a brilliant performance. They both gave brilliant performances. But Rex Harrison had been longtime friends with Julie Andrews, of course, because they had done My Fair Lady on Broadway for so long. And when he announced it, he said, and the winner is, and he opened up the envelope and he said, Julie Christie. And he put this great big pause in there just to play a prank on Julie Andrews. And then the next category was for Best Director. Robert Wise won for Sound of Music, and Julie Andrews got to go up in his place and accept that Oscar. And apparently there was an incredible amount of applause for her, kind of like as, making up for her not winning that Oscar. But anyway, he won the Oscar. He was on He was on some sort of a boat in the middle of a sea outside of Taiwan. That makes me sound so uneducated. I should know that sea, the name of that sea that's outside of Taiwan. But he was filming the Sand Pebbles, and they found out through radio, and somebody had hired like a bunch of native dancers that were down in the bottom of the boat to come out and dance for Robert Wise. So that is all of the fun history that I have about the making of Sound of Music. Is there anything else that you would like to add, Rachel?
Christopher Plummer is so incredibly attractive in this film, everybody. Yeah. Love him.
Well, they both are. Christopher Plummer and
Oh,
Julie Andrews are the biggest
like
smoke show in any Hollywood musical.
the dance they do. What is it? The Laden the
Lindler?
Ladenler.
Yeah,
Ooh, oh,
I
it's
know.
so good. My favorite thing on there was a trend on TikTok for a while. It probably is still happening. Was the people would put that clip on there, but then also talk about like how attractive Christopher Plummer is. Um,
Right.
so all love to him. God rest his soul. But yeah, no, I mean everyone. If you haven't seen Sound of Music at this point, stop everything you're doing and watch it. It's just a really good film. Also, your local community theater is probably doing it. Go watch it. Go support live theater right now.
Go
we
see
are
it,
in
yes.
we are in the post-COVID era of theater. Please go support your local theater. They are working hard. I genuinely love this movie. It's so good. I love Julie Andrews. Yeah, everyone go see it. It's really
I know.
good.
She's fantastic. Well, and just a few more things I noticed about Julie is rewatching it. I don't think I ever realized that her comedic timing, how much that brings to, she has tremendous comedic timing.
She's incredible.
And it's so subtle, but it's there and it's absolutely hilarious, and that's why she works so well with Carol Burnett, I think.
I I love the two of them together so much. Again, oh, I probably could do a whole podcast series on Julie Andrews. I love her so
Yeah.
much. But the Julie and Carol specials are like another level. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they're so good. And again, the Pratt Family Singers bit that they do, everyone, it's that yeah, if you love Sound of Music, you will love the Pratt Family Singers bit that they do. It's on YouTube. It's literally
Hmm.
15 minutes long. It's a whole huge sketch. But also, Julie Andrews moved to Switzerland with Blake Edwards, and she
Hmm.
became like a Swiss citizen at one point.
Hmm.
And she would go to the Alps and like sing Sound of Music just on her own because she just was like that she would like warm up. And she talks about how one time she was singing Sound of Music and she turned around and these Japanese tourists were just standing there watching her. they like happened to because she was standing like she was facing behind them and she was like this was like in the 80s when she was living in
Uh,
Switzerland, and she just turns around and these Japanese tourists are just like in awe of Julie Andrews singing
hmm.
to the Swiss Alps. Could you imagine like
I would be
just
too.
standing there watching Julie Andrews sing the Sound of Music in the Alps? I'd lose it.
I I would every extremity on my body would have something coming out of it. I would be
Oh
so
my gosh.
overwhelmed.
I saw
Um,
when Julie Andrews did her book tour for Homework. I went. She was at 92nd Street Y here in New York City, and I
mhm.
went and I cried. She came on stage. It was her and her daughter came in because her daughter helped co-write her book or like helped like
Right.
format and everything.
Right.
Um, but she came. She walked out. She talks a lot about Americanization of Emily in that when she did that because it was like a reflection of her work, and like
Right.
all the movies she talked about in Homework. And I start crying. She walked
Yeah.
out and like 12-year-old me was back. I was not okay. It was the best day of my life. And
That's great.
it was like October 2019, like right before
Right.
COVID. So it was like
Oh
the
man.
world was a good place.
It was. We'll never get back to that point, will we?
No.
That is a lost
No.
world. That is a lost world. We might. Who knows? If you haven't seen Sound of Music, I would say go see it. It's good stuff. I mean, it is. Some people get so caught up in like the saccharine sweetness. Go and enjoy the beauty of the film. Enjoy the beauty of it being shot on 70 millimeter film in
Mm-hmm.
deluxe color, and enjoy the wonderful orchestrations and the gorgeous music, and enjoy just
Mm-hmm.
Julie Andrews' charm and Christopher Plummer's sexiness and Eleanor
Yes.
Parker smoking the heck out of that cigarette.
Smoking the heck out of the cigarette in that
I
ballroom.
know.
She's alive with
Oh
Max.
yes, yes. She's basically Auntie Mame. And watch Gretel the entire film. Anytime
Oh,
she's on stage, one of my favorite lines is her running out of the living room and being like, "You know, this will be my first party."
She is her transatlantic accent is full tilt. It's
It
like, I
is.
think we're going to the party tonight. Fräulein,
Yes.
the sun has gone to bed. And so, listener, I'm doing the choreography as well while doing this.
Yes.
To bed, and so must I.
Have you gone through like all of your fun facts that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of any more. I can't really think of any more.